How's it going, everybody? You are listening to episode number 59 of Trail Tales. My name is Kyle O'Grady. I am a thru hiker. I am a peak bagger. I am a hiking nerd. And if you're a hiking nerd, you gotta hit subscribe to this podcast and tune in every single week, where I will be having more conversations with other hiking nerds just like myself. And speaking of hiking nerds, this week's guest is a man named Thru. He is known as Early Riser on trail and on YouTube as well. He thru-hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2017, and let me tell you, this dude and I have a lot in common when it comes to talking about the mental preparation, that whole side of thru-hiking. Honestly, I didn't really know very much about this dude until he kind of hit me up on YouTube. And through that, we were able to connect and make this episode happen. And honestly, one of my favorites. This is perfect timing. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this are going to be prepping for the Appalachian Trail this upcoming year in 2020. Actually, it is already 2020, so I got to get used to saying that. But anyways, it's a great talk. It's going to be great, for anybody who's looking to thru-hike the AT this year or any year in the future. And it was a great time. So Early Riser, when you hear this, we're going to do another one soon, because I have a feeling we could both talk about this stuff all day, every single day. And thank you so much. Folks, if you are tuning into the show every single week and you're actually listening to my introductions, which means you're hearing this right now, there's two things I need you to go do to help out this show, because obviously you're interested enough in the show that you're listening to this right now. So yes, iTunes reviews, you know how that goes. Please go leave a 5-star iTunes review. I will read it out loud during an episode introduction, which is actually what I'm gonna do right now. I got a couple since my last episode. So this one says, a transformative commute. Found Trail Tales recently. I am a hiker backpacker only, but the thru-hike stories from Kyle and his guests are a great escape from my daily 3+ hours commuting. Damn, that is rough. He writes, a bit rough around the edges. The podcast is an easy listen with lots of learning. Trail magic and trail angels is actually something. Who knew? Tune in, trail up. Great review. This is still definitely pretty rough around the edges, but it is what it is. This next review is short. It says, awesome show. Really enjoy the show. Keep it up, please. I will do just that. Thank you guys so much for the reviews. I've got a couple more I'm not going to get to right now, because the second thing I need you to check out if you are listening to this introduction right now and you tune in every single week is the Trail Tales Patreon, patreon.com/trailtales. Why should you give me your hard-earned money? Well, that is a great question. If you listen to the show on the regular and you want to ensure I can continue to produce it, unfortunately there are some small costs associated with it. I don't do the Patreon to get rich. I do not get that much money from there. I'm thankful for every single dollar I do get, but it's really not that much. The point of the Patreon is to help cover the costs of this show, the website hosting, the podcast hosting, various equipment, expenses, software, things like that. So if you could go check out the Patreon, once again, patreon.com/trailtales, that would be sick. End plug. I think I'm going to just say the Instagram, the email real quick, and then we're going to get into it. Instagram @TrailTalesPod. Go follow me on there. Facebook, I'll throw that out there as well. Go look up Trail Tales on Facebook. And email trailtalespod@gmail.com. Send me an email with some suggestions for guests or just anything about the show that you like or you dislike. Talk some shit. Do whatever you really want to do on there. Honestly, that would be cool. trailtalespod@gmail.com. And yes, go check out my YouTube channel. I forgot to say that a second ago, but Kyle Hates Hiking on YouTube. I freaking love playing with cameras and making bad jokes on YouTube, so go check that out. I just told a couple stories in my latest video about the 2 times I quit various thru hikes, and I don't know, it was a lot of fun. So yeah, Kyle Hates Hiking on YouTube, just search that, or you can follow the link in the show notes. And with that said, let's do it, folks. Early Riser is on the show, Appalachian Trail class of 2017. What's going on, everybody? Early Riser from YouTube, a really awesome Appalachian Trail thru hiker, is on the show today. And as we just discussed a second ago, dude, you were kind of surprised that I was only 23 years old. Why is that? I'm kind of curious.
I just think, I look back when I was 23, I'd already done a tour in the Marine Corps by then, but I still didn't feel like I was probably as mature and as put together as what you come across on your videos.
Dude,
and
have you seen my
podcast.
Wait a minute.
I have.
Have you seen my videos and all the photoshops and
I
shit?
have.
Dude, I'm literally going for the opposite of that. I'm going for like the immature, like just kind of like not asshole, but
I think you can't cover it up. I think you have the opposite effect you think you do, at least to guys like me. And being an older guy, I told you this is the first podcast I've agreed to come on because I kind of like your style and how you present yourself. So kudos to you for that, man. It's been interesting to watch you.
Dude, I really appreciate that. That really means a lot, honestly. And by the way, that's a great way if you're ever another a guest on a different podcast, like complimenting the host right at the start and just like stroking their ego like that. Great way to start the podcast.
Nobody ever does it on my podcast, so I thought I'd change up here.
You'll have to send them a link to this one then, because you know how it's done. I should start doing that the next time I'm a guest on someone else's podcast. Dude, that's funny. Yeah, man, thank you so much for doing this. Like you just said, this is your first, early riser hiking podcast anyways. And so like that's awesome. Like I just really appreciate you coming on today.
It's absolutely my pleasure, man. I've been looking forward to it all week, to be honest with you.
Dude, awesome. I have as well. Dude, where should we even start? I've 59 episodes now. I can't even remember how to start these. Yes, I know exactly how to start though. Tell everybody, I'm sure a lot of people here listening know who you are already, but for those that don't, why don't you just go ahead and explain who you are, what you've hiked, and talk about your vlog, anything you want, really. Who is Early Riser?
Yep, so to the hiking community, I am Early Riser 7-1. I came on the scene in late 2016, early 2017. I started off as a fan of AT through hike vloggers. I grew up near Amicalola Falls. Actually, we used to have our family reunions there, so that's where I kind of found out about the AT and kind of grew interested in it. And then I found some vloggers on YouTube, and my God, I was hooked ever since. I liked watching them go through the mental journey, and I like to see how each guy or girl portrayed the trail in their own way, in cinematic fashion or in voice. Decided, yep, I got to do it. So I went in and told work, hey, I'm either going to quit and go walk the AT, or you can let me take leave for 4 months and go walk the AT. It's y'all's choice. They chose, hey, man, we want to keep you around. So they gave me 4 months off. And Thru, I hiked the AT in 17, started February the 16th and summited Katahdin on June the 8th, 113 days later. That's about it, man.
That's about it. Nah, that's not about it, dude. You've been making a ton of videos since then as well. Dude, I don't even know where to start here. Shit. Like, so let me ask you this. Who were some of like the first vloggers that you followed? Because from what you just said there, it sounds like you kind of got into through hiking, or at least were exposed. Well, maybe not exposed to it, because you said you were from the, northern Georgia there. But the idea, it sounds like, came from, following those people on YouTube. So I'm just kind of curious, first of all, to have you verify if that's actually true or not, if I speculated too much there. And second of all, just who some of those people were that you followed originally.
No, you nailed it. I think that's exactly right. Some of the guys that stood out, and if anybody watched my channel, they know, because I talked about these guys all the time. And I think that's maybe what's a little bit different about me is I video long videos every day when I'm on the trail, but a lot of those times I'm talking about the experience that I had with other thru hikers when they thru hike. So Bigfoot is a huge one. Spielberg, who was probably my biggest inspiration. That guy, if you haven't watched any of his videos, man, I would just suggest your audience go click on a couple of his videos because they're special.
What's his name?
Spielberg. Yeah, and he obviously got that name because he's a master at the video, and it was great. He was the first one, actually, Kyle, that started doing forward-facing shots of the trail. Instead of just showing your face for 2,200 miles, he was actually showing the trail in front of him, and he was overlaying a voice, and it was amazing. So he hooked me in. Redbeard hooked me in, and then also everybody knows Dixie, and she hiked 2 years before I got out there, so I watched her whole through hike too. And watching somebody start with no experience and summiting the same year is pretty impressive as well.
Yeah, dude, for sure. You are like very well versed on the hiking YouTuber, the vloggers and stuff, dude. That's pretty insane.
I follow probably up to 50 to 100 people a year on YouTube. And I peter off really quick on some folks, and not because I don't value them or like them.
Of course, yeah.
It's just like you, I value the mental side. And if I see them struggling mentally and then I find out that they probably didn't prepare too hard, I kind of maybe unsubscribe or lean away from those guys, not because I want to support them, but really I'm looking for the people who are in it for the struggle the whole way.
Yeah.
And, again, that mental piece is what it's all about.
Yeah, man. And we're going to talk about that quite a bit today because as many of my listeners know, I am also very fascinated by that. I took mental preparation very, very seriously before I left for my through hike. Honestly, like, if I can even say this, I feel like I almost took it too seriously. Like, I was almost too, not really hard on myself, but at the end of the day, I almost want to say that through hiking the AT was easier than I expected it to be mentally, just because, not because it was easy, but because I was just so, like, hard on myself. Like, so, okay, like, Kyle, you are about to, like, fucking see some shit here. You have to, like be ready for this. I don't know.
There's a couple of things to that. So two things.
Yeah, dude, go for it.
One, when I got up to Vermont, New Hampshire, up in your neck of the woods, what I noticed about the people up there is they're a little bit different than where I grew up in the Southeast. People in the Southeast they don't have the White Mountains with Green Mountains to go play in on the weekends, but B, a lot of us don't seek that type of adventure on the weekends, at least when I was growing up in my era. So when I got up to your neck of the woods, what I noticed was I was out post-holing in snow in the White Mountains, and there was weekend day hikers just loving it out there, and I was miserable. And they're just a different breed up there. So I think guys from Vermont and girls from Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, I don't think the trail's as much as a mental struggle as it is for somebody who comes maybe from the Southeast. And I could be way off in my theory there, but that's what I saw play out on the trail.
See, I don't know if it's so much just geographic like that, or if it's more just based off of experience too, because a lot of those people trudging around in the snow, in the whites during the winter, or, just whenever it was, if there's snow there, generally speaking, those are going to be some of the more, I would hope at least some of the more experienced hikers, although I guess you have to start at some point. But
that's a great point. They're used to, hiking the mountains in the White Mountains are a whole lot different than the Georgia mountains. Georgia mountains are hard, especially starting off, especially if you're not ready. Georgia will kick your butt, but New Hampshire and even Vermont and Maine will destroy you if you're not ready for those. So southbounders, man, they have my utmost respect because they get it up front. And it's tough.
Dude, that is so crazy. Like, I've thought about that too. Because dude, like, you're in my opinion, southern Maine was probably, like, if we're gonna get real specific, that, like, first, I don't even remember how many miles, like the first half of Maine, was like
the Mahoosic Range.
Yeah, dude, terrible. Exactly. That was, like, physically speaking and mentally for me as well, but just for physically, we'll say that was the most difficult part of the trail, in my opinion. So the fact that Sobos, I guess the first, like, half of Maine, not easy, but it's not quite as bad, but, like, you still don't even really have your trail legs by the time you hit southern Maine like that. So that honestly does blow my mind, and I have a lot of respect for Sobos who can kind of put up with that right from the start. That's
me too.
Crazy.
I was in the 100-mile wilderness when the Sobo train kicked off in June. Katahdin opened on June the 1st, I think, in 17. And so I was passing some folks who had been up Katahdin a couple days earlier, and 90 to 95% of them, I kid you not, Kyle, were all limping or they had something messed up with them already. Because Katahdin's that hard. People don't understand it until you actually go do it, but Katahdin is a tough freaking mountain to start with, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude, definitely.
The other thing I wanted to say about your comment about how you prepped maybe too hard was I had the same experience, and I don't want to bring in the military too much, but it was exactly what you said. The first time I was ever in some raging combat, I looked around, I was like, is this it? Is this because we had prepped so hard for it up to that point? The real thing didn't seem bad at all. And I think that goes back to the preparation you were talking about on your hike. I just want to know, what did you do to prep? You said you prepped really hard. What were some of those things? Because I think people need to hear that, man. I think people don't understand how to prep the mental side.
Yeah, man. So for me, it was a little bit unique in that, as I've said many times on the show, a lot of my listeners have heard me say this. I spent, like, years, like, kind of preparing for this trail. I decided when I was, like, 16 years old that I wanted to thru hike someday. And awesome. It sounds weird to say, but every single hike that I did leading up to the time I actually thru hiked, or maybe not right when I first started hiking, but say, from like 2014 up to 2018 when I actually thru hiked, every single hike I did, and I put in, probably over 1,000 miles between when I first started and when I actually ended up, starting the Appalachian Trail. Every single hike that I did in the back of my mind was like a prep for the AT, which is a very awkward way of saying that. But for instance, there was many times, and one time in particular that just pops into my head here. I was on the Dix Range in the Adirondacks, which for anybody familiar probably know that the Dix Range and honestly all the 46ers pretty much are pretty rough. I was on a herd path. It was some pretty gnarly stuff, and it was like late September, raining, just like the worst conditions you can possibly have without it being winter, basically. And I was like, I don't want to say I was like borderline hypothermic, but I'm sure a lot of people can relate. I was at the point where if I hadn't like started to make some important choices about my clothing, about my pace and getting back to a warmer place, then I was kind of going in that direction. Like I was fine, but I had to be kind of mindful of that. And it was just like just awful conditions, not comfortable whatsoever. And I remember for the probably 10 miles, I had to kind of put up with that in the back of my head the entire time. It was okay. Like, can you handle this? Like, if you really want to thru hike the Appalachian Trail, can you put up with conditions like this on a regular basis? Can you put up with these conditions for, weeks and months at a time, which is kind of exaggerating a little bit, but, I was really just testing myself. And that's just one example. Every single time I was in any sort of uncomfortable situation on the trail, it would always come back to the AT, like, okay, like, can you handle this? And it's kind of like, I feel like it's slightly kind of fucked up because like I was just like maybe like putting a little bit more pressure on myself than I needed to, but I definitely feel like it paid off. Now, let me turn this back around to you. So obviously my experience was a little bit, my mental preparation experience, that is, was a little bit unique just because I feel like most people who thru hike the Appalachian Trail don't have that much time to prepare, let alone that much time to hike and stuff. So what did you do? I guess this is kind of the question we're going to be kind of addressing this entire episode. What did you do to prep your mind before you left for the AT?
Yeah, so my entire adulthood was spent in special operations, so I have a lot of time suffering and learning how to deal with it. But what I would offer people is a thru hike's a little bit different. So just because you're good in the military, or just because you're a good athlete, doesn't mean you're going to go be on the AT or any other long trail and be successful. There's some things you're there for a long time, and time and distance are big equalizers to a lot of people. So for me, things that I knew was that was going to happen as soon as I got out there the first few nights. Nobody ever sleeps good the first few nights because they're excited. I wanted to try to get over that as fast as possible. So I spent a lot of nights in my tent in the backyard, getting used to all the kit, making sure everything, like I knew how to get my sleeping pad to the level of comfort that I wanted, because everybody just blows that thing full up and lays on it, and it's like a rock. So it's those little things that you can learn and adapt before you ever step foot at Springer or Katahdin or whatever trail you're going to hike, and to make those first few days easier so you can adapt faster and you can focus on hiking and having fun versus, man, this sucks. Because a lot of people get out there and their first few days, they're like, man, this sucks. And that's a shame to me. I think, man, what an opportunity. They spend all that time on gear and equipment, and they get out there and they just don't enjoy their time. And that really sucks for me. I hate to see it.
Yeah, dude, for sure. Have you read Appalachian Trials?
I have. I just, on my newest video, I think I put that in the link too.
Oh, really?
That's a book that people need to read.
That is a fantastic book. I mean, there's a reason that it like spurred the biggest like backpacking through hiking like a blog that exists now. I mean, I've said this a couple times too, but for anybody listening who's going to be attempting a thru hike this year, even it doesn't even have to be the AT. Really, any thru hike. I mean, there's the Pacific Crest Trail Pacific Crest Trials version as well, but it doesn't even have to be one of those two. Even if it's a shorter thru hike too, that book is absolutely kind of going back to what I did to prep. I think that book had a huge influence on it as well, because reading that, or even before I even read it, I remember I saw this video of Zach, who I'd love to have on the show at some point. I saw this video of him just talking about the book, and it was like 4 minutes long, just like a webcam. It wasn't like a well-produced, like high-quality video, and he was basically just like, hey, look, through hiking is really fucking hard, and you should prepare for it. I don't know why this book doesn't exist already, but it doesn't, and I'm going to write it, and I wrote it, and like here it is basically. And that kind of fascinated me, and that got me like thinking about it. I got to say, at that point I had a little bit of experience hiking, but nothing more than just a couple days. And that really is like what made me realize that I need to take some of this stuff seriously. And that's why I really appreciate, people like yourself that do cover this stuff. And we can kind of get into this a little bit, because it sounds like we agree that a lot of the people on YouTube, not even saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but a lot of the people don't cover the mental shit. They focus on gear, and they focus on some of the more positive shit. And like, I totally get that's more entertaining most of the time. It gets more clicks. Like, that's totally fine. No problem there. But it is kind of refreshing that you are somebody else that talks about this stuff and understands the importance of this stuff.
Yeah, I hope that, I think my entire time that I've been vlogging, what I try to get across to people is what I want through my involvement on YouTube is for people to learn just enough to where they can experience that magic the entire 2,200 miles instead of only experiencing 50 of it and then going home. Because up front's important, but I will tell you, and you know this better than anybody, once you get into the 1,000-mile mark, the 1,500 mark, especially the 2,000-mile mark, some very special things start happening in your life. You can't explain them. They're intangible. But it is a special place to be the last few weeks of this hike, and especially getting to the top of it at Katahdin. To me, man, there's no better icing on the cake. So everything I do is to try to I want people to be able to experience that because it is that special. It was that special to me. And if they're not mentally preparing, we already know that only 20 to 25% of the people make it to Katahdin. I think that number can be increased if people would just do what they need to do up front and quit using time as an excuse. Because if you got to go to work for the next 7 days, that's good. You can sleep in your backyard, though. You can do something to help that adaptability up front.
Yeah, man, for sure. And I'm going to sidetrack us a little bit here, but one thing that I found helpful was I think I'm going to make, or at least mention this in a future video too. Like, I use my physical preparation time, in the months leading up to the through hike as a way to also prep my mind, right? So that was, beautiful. I was finishing up my senior year of college. I had a lot going on, and it, I was still thinking about it, towards the end of the year, but for most of my senior year and all of first semester and in the first half of my second semester senior year, I hadn't really, I had thought about it enough that I knew I was going to do it, and I had plans to do it, but it didn't really click until, say, the end of March maybe. And I left in mid-May. And so after that, I did start to think about it, and I basically, I was working out quite a bit. And, around that time too, I started to tailor my workouts, instead of a just whole body workout to more of just a, cardio and leg workout to get ready for the hike, obviously. Yep. And I would use that time at the gym or when I was running to also just prep my mind. That was my allotted time to only think about the AT. I had all these exams and college stuff, social stuff, fraternity stuff. And that was my time to block all that other stuff out and only think about prepping myself for the trail. So I don't know. I'm kind of curious to hear. And again, people say, I talked about this a little bit in the video I just published 10 minutes ago here. People say you don't necessarily have to prep your body, and that's a whole nother debate. I'm just kind of curious to hear what you did. Did you prep physically at all beforehand? And if you did you also kind of tie that into the mental stuff?
Yeah, I love this. Anybody that watches me is probably laughing that you just asked me that question right now. Fuck. Because everybody knows I am I push people a little too hard probably on the physical side.
I didn't do my homework, folks.
No, it's good. I'll get some trolls on my channel every now and then saying, hey man, I didn't do any exercise and I made it just fine. Just take it slow in the beginning. I just push back on them and say, I get it, man. I get it. You're probably one of those exceptional cases that has the mental capacity to overcome some of that physical pain. But a lot of people aren't that way. So why not prep? Why not just do some things?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I prep. Man, I work out every day. I have a 7-day-a-week workout schedule, but I agree with you. I think Joe Rogan and a whole bunch of other monsters out there will tell you got to do something hard every day. And I believe that. I kind of subscribe to that mindset of every day I'm going to punish myself a little bit and make myself uncomfortable a little bit, because we're all seeking comfort. It's part of our nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to at least once a day, man, you got to do something just to push yourself out of that comfort zone and make your mind sort through that pain and that discomfort.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, for sure. I'm glad to hear you're kind of in the same boat there, because I hear this advice all the time. Like, oh, you can just hike yourself into shape. You don't need to train. And like, I'm not going to say it's like wrong, because technically you can do that in every single year. People do that. But I just feel like when people say that, it's kind of misleading, because I do believe that you're way, way better off training physically beforehand, not only for the mental stuff, because I mean, honestly, that's a huge benefit, but also just like if you're hurting less at the beginning, like you're gonna have more mental capacity to like
100%
to kind of come to terms with what you're doing, right? I talked about this in my latest video again, and so like I just it gets me. It's like when people say that, it's like you're not wrong, but you're kind of misleading people. So I'm glad to hear you're kind of on the same page there.
I work with a lot of strength trainers and just a bunch of professionals at work who train our operators. Most of these guys have been either in the professional sports or in college sports. And man, they understand the body and they understand the strain that's put on it in something long like a through hike. And they'll all tell you that if you don't do the prep work up front, all the ligaments, all the tendons around your knees, all those things are not getting built up to support what they're going to need to, especially in those first few days in Georgia. And I made it to Blood Mountain. I think I made it there around 10 o'clock on day 2. And there was a guy up on top. He was laid out on the rocks, and I started talking to him, and I interviewed him for my video. And he was on day 7. He left Springer 7 days ago, and he said,
laugh,
"Hey man,
like I'm not trying to be a dick, but that is like
no." I told him I was proud of him because he told me he retired. He's been 30 years sitting behind the desk. He didn't do any prep for it, and it took him 7 days. Now, deep inside, I knew he wasn't going to make it to Katahdin, but man, he made it to Blood Mountain. I was patting him on the back for it. I don't know how much farther he made it, but just. I keep in my back of my mind, what if he would have prepped for it? What if?
Yeah.
Because he was dying, man. He was not enjoying it. It was not fun. And it's like I say in my videos, if you just prep hard, man, you can enjoy hard. If you don't prep hard, you're not going to enjoy at least the first few weeks or months out there, probably, because you're just going to be dealing with too much pain. Dude,
you're spitting too much truth right now. This is I don't know if I can handle this, because I agree 100%. And I didn't start, at a more common start time, because I started pretty late, but I did still see people, even just section hikers, who like, yeah, dude, they were hurting. I remember like I see, again, I'm laughing, like I'm not trying to be a dick to these people, because everyone's going to start somewhere. But I met this couple that started or I met them on top of Springer. And I did the approach trail that first 8 or 9 miles, whatever. I think I started at like 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and I was up there by like 6 or 7 dinner time.
Yeah.
And it took this couple like 3 days just to make it to the top of Springer. And like when they first told me that, I was like, okay, maybe I wasn't like, maybe I'm in pretty good shape here. Like maybe I don't need to worry about this mental stuff as much. But and again, like hike your own hike, like whatever, but I don't know that. Yeah, it is important to do that stuff, and also to be clear, and I'm sure you'll agree with this as well. When we talk about like physical training, if you're getting ready to go out in 2020 and you're hearing this and you're like freaking out, like, oh my god, I'm not like we're not. You don't have to be like putting in like 4 hours at the gym every single day.
No, not at all.
It doesn't even have to be that intense. Just anything really. And again, like in my opinion, like the having that allotted time to focus on the mental stuff is just as important. So I don't know. There's not that much that goes into it. It's going to be different for everybody, and I'm not going to even come close to claiming that I am an expert on like physical training. So you got to figure out what works for you, and if you're really that serious about it, you should probably even consult a trainer or whatever. But all I did was like 3-4 days a week, running 3 or 4 miles max. I was still in school full time. Like I didn't have that much time. And then, a couple days at the gym, maybe, just doing some squats and the leg machines and all that stuff. And that was really it. I was still a little bit sore. I was still hurting a little bit at the start of my thru hike, but just there was people around me that, dude, they were fucking beating the shit out of themselves. And here I was, I did like 15 miles on my, I guess it was my second day, the day after I summited. And like, I was feeling, not great, but like I was fine. Like,
Where'd that put you? Gooch Gap Shelter?
Was it Gooch? I think it was
Yeah.
Gooch Gap. So I went up to the top of Springer the first day, and then it was like 15 and a half to, I think it was Gooch Gap Shelter.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I went to Gooch Gap Shelter my first day as well, and then it was full, and the introvert early risers like, I want to keep going. So I went to Gooch Gap where that road crosses, and there's a big field there. I hung out there the first night. But back to your point, I think what I notice, and I do a lot of behavioral stuff at work. I run our selection process, so I look at human behavior all the time. And what's interesting out on the trail is you got your planners and you got your let's just go see what happens, hold my beer type of people. What I would suggest to anybody starting out, though, to help with the mental and the physical side, and I think this is just like a football game. Most teams will come into a football game, they'll have their first 4 or 5 plays scripted, and then they're going to get hit in the mouth, and then they got to just adapt. I would just suggest for people, especially if you haven't done a lot of physical prep, just plan your first day or two. Keep yourself to those lower mileages. And I hate to say that, but man, it's the truth. And then stick to that schedule and then see how that body's feeling and then adjust from there. Because you're going to get hit in the mouth out there. You're going to hurt. All of us, like you just said, all of us hike to our limit. I went 17 miles the first day, and then I went 20-something the second day. Jeez. I was a hurting puppy after that, man.
Dude.
So I knew I needed to pull back. But that's what everybody has to figure out when they start. Just don't start. I don't know if you've heard of Craig Maines or Hawk. He's doing a yo-yo right now. In fact, he finishes his yo-yo day after tomorrow down at Springer.
Dude, that's crazy. I've not heard of him. I'm going to have him on the show, though. That's fucking nuts.
Dude, he's a mental giant. That's his 4th time doing the AT. He did it once in 2012, and he's done it consecutively the last 2 years, and this year was a yo-yo. He's a mental giant. His first day on his northbound leg in February, he made it to Nils. He went to Nils Gap.
Damn.
Didn't plan on it, but he went to Nils Gap. It's unbelievable. He's a beast, man. That's a guy who I would love to hook you up with and get on the show and he can't even tell you why he does it. He's just a hard human being who has the best time of his life when he's hiking. He's a fun person to watch.
Dude, that's incredible. What's his name? Craig Hawks?
No, Craig Maines, Mains.
I don't know why.
His trail name is Hawk.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Craig Maines, Appalachian Trail. I see it now. Subbed. Yeah, fuck. Like yo-yo, that's insane. I talked to one dude who yo-yoed the PCT, but I've yet to talk to any AT yo-yoers. I mean, how many are there even that exist?
Yeah.
So, dude,
I keep trying to think of how do you even do it. I got to Katahdin, man. My body was so just hurting. I was just so ready to go home, and I can't imagine just touching the sign and turning around and doing it again.
Yeah, like I'm halfway. Yeah, dude, absolutely fucking blows my mind. Dude, what do you think was the hardest section of the AT for you mentally? And I'll let you define what I mean by section there, because I'm not saying like a state or like a quarter. Yeah. I'll let you choose what that means. But yeah, what was the hardest section for you mentally?
I was listening to one of your podcasts today, and you were talking about Vermont with somebody, and I know that was dear to your heart. So I was thinking about it a little bit today too. Of Vermont started, I think it's the introduction into the hard part of the trail. I don't think Vermont is near as hard as the whites or whatever, but it kind of preps you for that next section. When I got into the whites, I got there a little too early, man, for the season. MISCELLANEOUS, I went up it. There was a little snow going up, but when I was coming down the steep side, the north side, it was an ice skating rink, and there was nothing you could do when you start descending. It was just you get on your butt and you slide down, and you're doing about 50 miles an hour, it feels like. And if you don't grab a tree or something, man, you're going off into the waterfall. It was torture.
Jesus.
That one shook. I skydive, I do everything else, Kyle, but that one shook me up. And if you watch the end of that day, I camped out at a creek down at the bottom near the parking lot, and I was a little mentally jacked that day. Overcame it. Started going up Kinsman the next day. And the temperature, I'm not kidding you, this is May 18th. I just went and looked at the weather report, and it was 93 to 94 degrees in New Hampshire on May the 18th. So I'm climbing up the Kinsman. I'm post-holing in snow because there's still snow everywhere.
Yeah, man, that's the whites for you.
It is. And so my lower body, I'm thinking I'm going to go hyperthermic. And then my upper body, I'm sweating so bad, I'm afraid I'm going to go into heat stroke. So I think the only thing that saved me from going into heat stroke was my feet being in snow the whole way up the Kinsman. So that beat me down mentally. And then getting to southern Maine, going over the Wildcats and getting to southern Maine, that I was on a struggle bus that whole time, man. So I really didn't recover mentally. I mean, don't get me wrong, dude. I was going to make it regardless unless I broke my leg or something. But that doesn't mean you're mentally strong just because you're making it. I was in a hurt locker, man. And I probably overcame it near the 100-mile wilderness and started regaining my wind and finished fairly strong. But that's a tough section that you live close to up there. And I kind of want to go do it again just to try to not be on the struggle bus so much.
Yeah, dude, you should. It's beautiful. A lot of people that listen to this podcast are not through hikers and are like White Mountain, like peak baggers and stuff instead. So
such a beautiful.
They're gonna be telling you that same thing, dude. You definitely should. That's So it almost sounds like your most difficult mental part was due to like your physical surroundings there. Yeah, in the physical conditions. It wasn't necessarily. Well, I'm sure, where you were at on your hike definitely didn't help the fact that you're that far in at that point. But it sounds like the conditions and the terrain really kind of contributed to that.
It did. My subscribers know these 2 days too. My wife and my family came up and visited me twice. She came once when I was in the Shenandoah, and then they came up again in Pennsylvania. And let me tell you, man, when everything that you love and you hold dear in your life turns around and starts driving south and you have to walk north away from it, dude, it was crushing me. And here's what's cool about vlogging. And I was the first one to really ever post my videos real time, meaning I would get them out at least the same day or the next morning. People could keep up with me where I was at on the trail. So about Virginia, people just started showing up out on the trail looking for me to give me trail magic and whatnot. So both days after my family left, somebody just magically appeared in the middle of the woods right when I was at my lowest. And they freaking just snapped me out of that little pity party I was having for myself. And I credit them with saving my hike. There's a guy named David Smith in Pennsylvania, and he knows the story well because I said it on my blogs. But man, he appeared at the magic moment where I was like, screw this. I'm calling my wife. I'm telling her to turn around and come get me. And he appeared and changed my whole day, man. So there's some mental low points out there, and no matter who you are, and that's what my last video was about, the demons are coming to find you, and they're going to find you. It's just, do you have the tools to deal with it when they come?
Yeah, dude. That's incredible, man.
Sorry, what was yours, dude? I got to hear yours because you started late. By the way, you probably said it on another podcast, but why did you start in May?
Yeah, exactly, dude. I would have started earlier if I could. If I could have, but I
dude,
really
I was
just
in the White Mountains when you started.
Dude,
basically.
I was literally just thinking about it when you were telling that story. That I was like, Jesus Christ! I was I was in Georgia still on May 18th.
That is crazy. I was to be hot as hell.
I was like a day out of Neil's Gap. Honestly, dude, the heat didn't really hit me or really get to me until I got to like Virginia, and it really started to set in. My first month or so was relatively like rainy and wet, so. Which at the time I was bitching and moaning. Little did I know that was way better than dealing with the humidity and the heat and stuff.
Dude, that's my kryptonite, bro. I don't know. I think you guys who do later through hikes and hike through the summer, I think y'all are some of the strongest mental people probably in the world.
Dude, I don't know, man.
That is hard as hell.
Dude, I don't know. And again, this probably goes back to the geographic thing, but I don't know. The heat was hard. The heat was definitely hard. I will say that I don't like to hike when it's like really cold. Towards the end of my hike, we had a couple nights in the 30s my last couple of weeks, and I'm not a huge fan of that. Although it probably was still better than the heat. But
I was just saying, I only caught one day in the 80s, and the rest of the time I was using a 20-degree quilt the whole way and was never hot in it. Like, it was cold. I rode the front side of Spring all the way up to Katahdin. It was crazy, man.
Dude, hiking through the snow in the whites though, that's gonna be, I don't know. I feel like
terrible.
that's more mentally challenging than anything I faced.
So Hawk, the guy who did the yo-yo, when him and the guy he was walking to, when they got up there, the snow levels were much higher this year. He got there almost the same day that I did. I think he was going up to Kinsman on May 16th or 17th or something like that. They tried it twice. They had snowshoes. They still couldn't make it up it, so they went and did the long trail. So he not only did a yo-yo, he also did the whole long trail too.
Jesus
on this
Christ!
thing,
and
to
the
wait
long
the
trail's,
snow out.
Long trail is not fucking easy either. Damn, that's
no.
crazy.
I've heard you say and other people say the 100 miles that isn't AT is like way harder than any part of the AT. It's what a lot of people say.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's way harder. I would say it's like slightly easier than the whites, maybe in some spots.
Wow, that's still legit though.
It's pretty tough. Yeah, it's definitely harder than the AT section through Vermont.
That's awesome.
It's a sweet trail though. For me, the most mentally challenging part of the trail was probably, there's a couple different sections. The beginning was hard, Virginia was hard, but I think the most challenging part was actually Maine, honestly. And even the second half of Maine, like literally up until the day I finished, that was really hard, and it's kind of hard to explain why. I know why, but I've talked about it on a couple other episodes and on some other podcasts I've been guests on, and it's really hard to articulate it, but it's just like, at that point, I'm less than, 200 miles. I've crossed over the 2,000 mile mark. What is, another 190 miles at that point, right? But I almost feel like because I had come so far, I knew exactly what 200 or what 190 miles like felt like, and that's still a long fucking like ways, and especially through Maine where the terrain's pretty difficult, and I was probably a little bit not intimidated, but just like a little bit nervous for the 100 mile and the extra logistics you have to kind of deal with going through there. And I don't know, dude, all that stuff combined just kind of got to me. And another thing too is you might find this fascinating, honestly. When I started the trail, I was very focused on not thinking about how many miles I had left. That was like a huge priority. In AWOL, they have the mileage that you've come so far, and then right next to it, the mileage that you have left. Next to every single waypoint, every single shelter, water source, road crossing, all that stuff. And I pretty much trained my brain to just block that number out. Like the number that said how many miles I had left, that is. I never paid attention to that. Like, it was literally like a black spot when I would look at it. I never ever looked at that shit. And for some reason, I was able to keep that up all the way until I got to the Maine border. But once I hit that Maine border, something just clicked in my head, and I was like, okay, like I'm almost there now. I can like kind of give into that. And Maine is still a long fucking state. Like, it is the last state. You're close. You're way more than, you are like just really close, but you still have a long ways to go, and it is so difficult as well. So the fact that I kind of just let myself like give in that regard and started thinking about the end, started thinking about how close I was, really fucked with me. And it kind of sucks because looking back on it, I wish I was able to enjoy Maine a little bit more. The weather was like unbelievable through there. We were getting the fall colors and stuff, and like the scenery is just amazing in Maine, as you know. But I don't know, like it was tough. I let myself burn out, basically. I think if I had gone into it knowing that I need to literally up until the last day not ever think about how far I have left, then I think I would have done a lot better. But shit, I don't know.
Man, I appreciate you sharing that. And I think that describes a lot of what I was dealing with in Maine as well. I went out on the trail to try to let go of some of my ego, some of the parts of me that gets up and I got to plan everything out and I got to stay on a timeline. And I tell you, the trail just brought it out. I naturally fell back into it. When I got up to Maine, I finally realized, why are you wearing your watch? Because I don't know if people notice, but it's those little things. I look down at my freaking watch 1,000 times a day on the trail. And what it does is just take you out of enjoying what you're doing and worrying about something that you can't even control. You can't control time. Why do I need to look down at my watch all day? I still have hundreds of miles to walk. So I started figuring some things out, but I think I burned myself out as well. And I keep telling people, Kyle, every through hike vlog I watch, when I hear them say no rain, no pain, no Maine, which I'm so over that saying because Maine is the second longest state on the AT.
Yeah,
and
dude.
if you get to that Maine sign, which by the way is the start of the Mahoosucs, if you get to that sign and then think you can take or loosen up your rucksack straps a little bit, you are going to get slammed mentally hard because those next 30 or 40 miles, I think, are the hardest on the trail. So I just keep telling people, man, the goal's Katahdin. Don't focus on that main sign and just enjoy it a little bit more. Quit worrying about little things like everybody. What's funny, and when you were saying all that, I was thinking about, I started learning to enjoy wet feet when I got up into New Hampshire.
Damn, dude.
And if you watch everybody's video, that's what everybody is concerned about is the first time during the day they got to get their feet wet. It drives people insane. And some people, and I love it, they just say, man, just wake up and take a freedom step. Just get your foot wet right then and you don't have to worry about it the rest of the day.
That's so good.
But people are so scared of doing that. So everybody that watches me know about Vermont. It was Vermont because it was Vermont when I went through. It was flooding. My feet started healing up when they were flushed out all day long. All the bacteria that builds up, I was flushing all that out all day long. And as long as I let my feet dry at night, I would wake up the next day and they were as in good a shape as they had ever been. So I kept them wet all the way to Katahdin, man. And what a weird experience. Nobody could really comprehend that was working. Kind of shocked me too. But every day I would just wake up, take freedom steps, and every creek I saw, I would sit there and soak my feet in them for a little while.
Dude, so crazy, so crazy. I don't like having wet feet. you got me on that one, dude. You got me on that one.
Nobody does, and it's odd.
Although I'm sure my feet were less wet than yours were, given the time of year you were going through. Why did you? I'm sure you've talked about this on your channel before, but why did you hike it so fast? Was that intentional? Like, did you start out with that with that as like a plan, or is that just kind of what happened?
Yeah, I got a lot of pushback on the channel because people. When you're vlogging, people, they think they understand what you're going through, but really, even when I had my long vlogs, which were 28 minutes a day or something like that, man, I was hiking for 12 hours. What you're seeing is 28 minutes of it. So a lot of people just assume that you're blowing past views and stuff. Man, it's not the case. I was just going at what pace. I would push my body every day until I was just past what I thought it was capable of, and then I'd go ahead and camp or do whatever. What I was doing was I like that feeling of pushing myself. So to me, it's a challenge. And it ended up being, I got into a rhythm of where I was doing 4 25-mile days in a row, and then I would take a 0 day. So I'd do 100 miles in 4 days and then take a day off. I was just trying to keep about a 20 average until I got to New Hampshire. And honestly, I kept a 20 average going through the whites. And then I finished it not that people care, but I think I was like a 19.7 mile average when I summited Katahdin.
Damn, dude.
It's just fun. It's fun for me to track that, and it's fun. I love watching the people break the fastest known time records. Would I do it? No, but man, what beasts can they did that trail in under 45 days, man.
Isn't that fucking insane? Like, that's what, like multiple marathons a day over mountains for like 40 fucking days in a row. Like,
yeah, I was
crazy.
in Duncannon or somewhere on day 45, and I was dying, and these people were summiting Katahdin in that same time frame, and I don't even comprehend it.
That shit always blows my mind. I've never really had like an FKT holder on this show. I'd like to at some point. Probably not for the AT. They're a little bit above my pay grade, but
yeah. Mental giants, though. If you want to talk to mental giants, talk to some people who do endurance races, like a 200, 300 mile races.
Yeah, man.
That's crazy, man.
That shit is absolutely insane. Dude. There's so much here. I don't even know where to go next. Like, goddamn.
Let me ask you, did you deal with bugs?
A little bit for like honestly, I was a little bit lucky with bugs. Although I did get mosquitoes pretty bad going through let's see, like New Jersey up through Massachusetts. But dude, trust me, living here, I know what it's like during the spring up here in New England. Sure. So I'm sure you got absolutely fucking destroyed, huh?
Yeah, and I think that's another reason why I didn't enjoy Maine a lot, because, man, you stop.
And all that water, all the rivers and lakes you're passing, dude. Yeah, that's not good with bugs.
I was at a shelter, and I couldn't even think straight. I was getting eat alive. I don't know how people stay in shelters in the spring, man. I'm in my tent every night. It's just something for your faster hikers you got to think about. If you get up there in the springtime, black fly season, you are going to face a new mental challenge that most of you might not realize how bad it's going to be.
Dude, that's so crazy. The Adirondacks are a lot like the 100-mile wilderness, just for instance, in that there's a lot of water and the bugs are really, really bad. I attempted the Northville Placid Trail, which is a trail in the Adirondacks, and I left on June 1st, and this trail is literally just all lakes and rivers pretty much, and absolutely fucking destroyed by bugs for 8 days. So dude, I cannot imagine dealing with that for more than just a couple days you had to. Oh man, it's so bad.
I didn't tell many people the story, but I was sitting in my tent and by some shelter. I was getting closer to the 100-mile wilderness. I was a couple of days out of Shaw's because I stayed in Shaw's before I entered the 100-mile. And I was in my tent and I heard something huge gallop. And it was right outside my tent door. I probably could have reached my arm out. And it was snorting, and you could hear it trying to get the flies off of it. And as it was running off, I looked out, and it was a moose that had freaking ran right. Man, I'm so lucky it didn't run over me in my shelter, but had run right by me. And those black flies were driving it crazy, man. Anyway, it's a different environment up there for a southern boy to be up there in spring.
Yeah,
wasn't
dude.
used to that.
Were you, judging by your accent, I'm gonna guess this is the case. Were you born and raised in the South? Always lived there?
Yep, I was about 40 miles from Amicalola, just north of Atlanta.
Damn, dude, that's crazy. First of all, I just gotta say, two of my guests in a row, because last week's guest, Jeremiah Springer, also I think he's from Kentucky. He's got a super thick accent, so I'm all about the Southern accents, dude. I love Southern accents.
Man, I thought I got rid of mine. You saying it's still there?
Oh,
Damn.
It's still there. It's still there. And honestly, dude, every time I say something like that to somebody with an accent, they always take it in a bad way. And I'm like, no, dude, I like the accent. It's cool. My parents.
Well, if you have this accent and you go out to California or somewhere, you're instantly considered about 40 IQ points lower than everybody else.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
It's hard to overcome.
Unfortunately, up here, it's probably the same way too, because, I don't know. It's different for me, though, because my parents moved to the South, a couple of years ago. They live in, a Hilton Head area of South Carolina.
Awesome. I know it well.
And when they moved down there, I was expecting, a bunch of people with accents, but I came to find out pretty quickly that most of the people in that area are just transplants from the North. So I go 100%. Down there to visit. I'm literally leaving tomorrow morning to go visit for Christmas and stuff. And
good for you.
It's just no accents. I'm come on. I feel like I'm being cheated out of my Southern experience here.
That place, anywhere on the coast. And then if you go down to Florida, we call it the southernmost Yankee state in America because it is just full of transplants that came down for the warmer weather.
Dude, that's so funny. Yeah, you're so right because yeah, every time I've been to Florida too, it's you go through the deep South and the Bible Belt, but then when you get to Florida, the accents and in some of the I haven't been to Florida that much, but from my experience, some of the Southern culture too just kind of goes away. But I don't know, definitely up near Amicalola Falls, that is not the case. And I don't know, dude, I love it. I love the South. I got a lot of listeners down there, so maybe I'm biased, but I have a lot of listeners all over the place. So I don't know. We got time for a couple more topics here. Dude, I don't know. I'll let you take over here, mostly because I don't really know where to go, honestly.
Yeah, man. Let me
Yeah.
Let me give a shout out to Quicksand. He's another through hiker that's coming solo right now. He's still out there, man. He just got back on the trail from a couple of weeks break. His name's Quicksand on the trail. And I think that's when we get back into the mental conversation, he's a good guy to go watch his through hike this time because he's been on the struggle bus mentally. The cold he doesn't like. He's done a northbound hike before, so he's a through hiker, but now he chose to do it southbound. He loved the first part of the trail, of course.
Mm-hmm.
He's from Georgia, so he's walking towards home, which I kind of want to ask you about too, because you were walking towards your house for a lot of the trail. But man, he was on a mental struggle bus for a while and he's been in and out. The beautiful thing about Quicksand though, that I want hopefully the listeners to go watch his through hike is he gets on the camera and he talks about it. That's something that, man, I didn't have the humility to do a lot. When I'm struggling, I would rarely turn on the camera. It's those vloggers that we can go watch who will get on camera and tell you what's in their mind. Man, it's so beneficial to see before you get out there because that is exactly some of the same things they will be going through if they're planning on through hiking in the future. So Quicksand on the trail, man. He makes amazing content. I would say his videos are up there close to Habitat's. And he kind of mirrors what he does after Habitat, actually.
As much profanity?
Not at all. Zero. He's family friendly, so.
I gotcha.
I love Abitat though. Me and him were in communication before he started his AT through hike. Like that dude is a beast.
Oh, man. Dude, he's so awesome. He's been on the show twice now, and I'm very thankful for.
They're good.
Yeah,
man.
dude. He's shown the show a lot of love, which is awesome. Dude, okay, so...
Oh, let me ask you this real quick,
go
Kyle.
go for it.
How was it walking home? Because I think that was one of my biggest mental struggles was I was walking away from this place that I love so much and the people that I love. So how was it getting to walk towards your house, at least for the first 1,500 miles?
I don't really know. I haven't really thought about this much. And... dude, I don't even know, man. Like, I don't even know. I will say that when I first started, making it back to Vermont was pretty much the same thing as finishing, as far as like how far away it felt, you know? You know, it wasn't like I was in my mind like, oh, I got to make it to Vermont and then I'll make it the rest of the way. It was just like Vermont is as far away as Katahdin pretty much. So I did think about it sometimes, and I will also say that making it to the Vermont border was like almost as amazing as making it to Katahdin. Obviously just not only because that was my state, but I had also hiked that first 30 miles of the long trail like 3 times before I made it there on my through hike. So I was just really familiar with that part of the trail. And so, dude, I don't know. Like I said, it wasn't until Maine that the mental struggle like really, really set in. And so I don't know if I necessarily going through New Hampshire, I was fine. So I don't know, dude. I don't know if I'm not obviously like based on my fumbling around here, like I'm not going to be able to give you a straight answer on that.
No, I mean, I think your answer was an answer. So let me ask you this then. A follow-up is when you woke up every day, what was Kyle's reasoning for going hiking that day? Like what was your driving factor every day? Not the ultimate goal you want to get to Katahdin, but what were you thinking of every morning when you got up to keep you going, especially on the hard days?
Another hard one. Especially on the hard days. It's for me, it's so related to my history with the idea of through hiking. I had set my mind on this when I was like 16, as I mentioned earlier, and there was never a time ever on my through hike where I considered quitting. I mean, of course, there's lots of times where I was like, I don't really want to be doing this right now, but there was never a time where I was like, oh, I just want to quit the trail. And like, I feel like it's hard to answer that without just saying making it to Katahdin. Like, I don't know, just I spent so much time, so many years, like just viewing the people that through hiked the Appalachian Trail. I said this in another episode as like they're like superhumans, right? Like I aspire to be that. Like that was like, I just looked up to that so much. And every day I would, you know, if I was able to get up and continue hiking, I was a day closer to being that thing that I aspired to be. And so I think that's probably the closest I'm going to get to being able to answer that question. No, that's
perfect. So I guess what I'm trying to get across here, and you just summed it up well, is there's a key to everybody's game, and for everybody it's different, and everybody needs to figure out what that key is. For you prepped so hard, and you looked up to those guys, and you wanted to kind of be in that same realm of badassery of the people that hiked it. Man, there was nothing probably going to stop you other than an injury, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that I would say that's fair.
For other people, man, they're going to hit some roadblocks, and if their why behind why they're hiking isn't strong, like it sounds like yours was set in stone. That's why I like people who vlog, because I kind of push on them and say, now you've got a whole community that kind of are your accountability mirror, if you will. You're putting out those videos. We're trying to help you up there, feed off our energy, and just all you got to do is keep walking. That's a piece of advice Spielberg gave me, and I just said it on one of my videos. Just keep walking. No matter whatever you're facing, all you have to do is just keep walking, and everything planes back out again, and the bubbles level once again. So I'm just trying to give people at least enough mental advice to where everything is overcomable out there unless your bone is sticking out of your leg or something like that. So
yeah, dude,
if you just keep moving forward, I don't care if you got to go take a 00, whatever it is, just keep pushing forward and experience the magic that's waiting on you when you get up to the top of that mountain in Katahdin, because it is worth everything that you go through.
Definitely. Dude, so obviously you're like super in tune with who's vlogging and all that stuff. And as we kind of talked about beforehand, I don't really watch the AT or any really trail vlogs for that matter. I went through that phase again when I was like 16 and I binge watched the shit out of that stuff for a couple years and I just kind of cut over it. So I am curious to know, who have you been, because, people are starting to post like their gear lists and their, Q&As, all the people that are getting ready to vlog in 2020. Who have you been kind of keeping an eye on? And I don't know, who are some of the hikers that are going to be heading out next year that some of my listeners should go check out on YouTube?
Yeah, so there's a few, and some of them are going to be mad if I forget them. But I know Camper 2020 is one. I think he spells Camper with a K. He's one of the more popular ones. Man, I'm just forgetting all of them right now.
I kind of put you on the spot there, dude.
No, it's good, though. What I will promise everybody is, here's what I do know. Ramdino hikes. Ramdino is the guy's name. He's awesome. He comes out with a video about weekly and updates everybody. He has a spreadsheet that he puts out on his vlogs that has everybody who's going to through hike this year. And he has everybody that's finishing their southbound hike on there. And he keeps up with all of them. He puts out trail weather for the AT. He does this whole spill every week or every 2 weeks. So if everybody will just go search out Ramdino on the trail, you will get every bit of information you need on who's hiking.
Cool, man. So I did not remember to remind you about preparing a story for the end, but you listened to a couple episodes, so I'm hoping that you were prepared. Is that true?
Yeah, and so does this have to be a positive?
Dude, it does not have to be positive. It can be, so if you're sitting around a campfire and somebody asks you for that like one story, what would that story be? That's what I'm looking for here.
Yep. So I'm sitting in Damascus, fresh ground, which I know somebody mentioned I think it was Frozen mentioned fresh ground on an episode a long time ago. Fresh ground's a trail angel out there. He just happened to be hiking the AT the year I was hiking. So I was walking with this legend and I didn't even know it. So me and fresh ground are sitting at the hostel in Damascus. A polar vortex is coming through. My dumb ass decides, hey, I'll go hike in it the next day. They were smart enough to stay. I leave the hostel and about 10 miles into the hike going northbound, obviously, I started coming down with a stomach impairment. I didn't know what it was. Ended up being noro.
Yikes.
So I got to a shelter about 15 miles in. I just threw up my tent. I was throwing up, had diarrhea all that night. It got down to, I think, 1 or 2 degrees. I woke up inside my duplex. All my breath had turned to ice on the inside. It was about 4 degrees when I started packing up my stuff about 4 in the morning, and I just started walking because I didn't have a choice at that point. I could lay there and possibly freeze to death or just get warm and start walking. So I did. I walked through the ponies that day up in the Grayson Highlands. I went 32 miles, I think, that day, not eating anything, hadn't just throwing up and diarrhea all day. Slept in a shelter that night. It got down cold again. Made it into Marion the next day and looked at myself in the mirror and almost quit.
Damn.
My ego couldn't handle. I pride myself on trying to stay somewhat in shape and big. I looked at myself and I looked like I was decimated, man. My body had eaten itself. I had lost about 28 pounds up to that point and almost called knock it off, which is a term we use in the military to quit. So that took a phone call with my wife and a new strategy of being a little bit smarter on the trail. So again, I just tie that in for everybody just to say, man, decisions out there could save you or kill you. And I made some poor decisions that time and learned a lot from it. But again, if you just keep moving forward, you're going to be okay.
Yeah, man, you were able to stick it out. That's all that matters. Dude, this was a lot of fun. I love talking about this mental shit. So I've said this like 1,000 times this episode already, but like the fact that you get that stuff and the fact that you are also fascinated about that stuff and are able to hopefully influence some other people, when it comes to this stuff is just really awesome in my opinion. So dude,
it's been fun, man.
Thank you so much for coming on. This was a lot of fun.
My pleasure, Kyle.
Let's do it again soon. With that said, why don't you go ahead and plug your YouTube and any other social media you want to plug, and people can go check your shit out if they're not familiar already.
Yep. So Early Riser 71, that's my YouTube and my Instagram channel. And also if you search Early Riser 71 or Howard Free, Free on Facebook, I'm on there as well. And then I also run a website and a YouTube channel for the 724 STG. That stands for Special Tactics Group. That's a unit I work for. And the reason why I'm plugging it is we have some podcasts on there, and I've got sports psychologists. I interview some strength coaches and a lot of other people. So I think if the hiker community in general would just go over and listen to some of those, you'll gain some really good tips from people who have made a living out of teaching people how to be mentally strong and physically strong. So go over there and check that out. There's some good episodes on there.
Awesome, man. I'll have a link to all that stuff in the show notes. Yeah, dude, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who's listening. And yeah, good luck to everybody who's heading out in 2020. Have a good one.